Oh, good afternoon. My name is Todd Spitzer, Todd Spitzer. I'm the District Attorney of Orange County. My jurisdiction extends 3 miles out. Everything after 3 miles out is under the jurisdiction of the federal government. So today, this press conference, I want to thank the good work of the Coast Guard and to our parks and individuals, all the people that are really working hard with fish and wildlife. The number one priority right now is to save animals and save wildlife. That is the number one concern. But what everybody wants to know is who's responsible and how did it happen, who's going to pay for it, and who's going to be held responsible. And Mr. Wilshire did speak on behalf of the company, but I was incredibly disappointed about what I heard from him. He indicated today that his divers are going to go down and try to determine the location of the rupture to the pipeline. If that is not done independently, that is a travesty. The company should not be responsible for leading its own investigation with respect to the hundreds of millions of dollars of devastation that it did to our environment and our economy. We are going to feel the impacts of this oil spill for generations. I just drove to the headquarters of Mr. Wilshire's company, and I will tell you, it took a security guard to get me in through that lobby. And what I'm telling you is they should have provided as much security for this pipeline as they are for their building in downtown Long Beach. To already be on record, and he did infer it, and don't mistake what he said, it is a probability that it could have been a ship anchor. I want you to think about that for a second. Every ship has GPS. We know the location of every ship. And it will be the investigation, a lawful, thorough, transparent investigation conducted by independent investigators or a federal governmental agency. It will be independent investigators or federal or county investigative agency which will independently determine the cause of that rupture. As a district attorney, depending on where my jurisdiction ends up settling, whether it's my jurisdiction or the federal government's, I can tell you that what I heard today cannot happen. It cannot happen. You must go to the federal government. Let me make something clear. The presentation today were from the good people that are responsible for dealing with the oil spill, the extent of the spill, and how to save wildlife. It did not include the investigators. And so let me tell you how this broke down, because I went myself. In downtown Long Beach, they have the individuals who are working, the deputy warden, assistant warden. They are doing the cleanup effort, and that command center is in downtown Long Beach. They have not yet set up a command center for the investigative investigation. That has not been established. I have dispatched and have assigned from my environmental unit district attorney investigators to be part of that investigation. And as soon as I leave here, I'm picking up the phone with the investigator who's in charge of this operation to demand, not insist, not ask, to demand that they get this squared away before that company puts divers down on that pipeline today. They shouldn't be able to go anywhere near that pipeline. They are biased, they're self-interested, and they're going to do everything they can to try to reduce their damages. And no one should touch that pipeline. No one from this company. It must be done independent, and it must be overseen by either Coast Guard divers or Orange County Sheriff Department divers. But it must be independent and corroborated. And I didn't hear any of that today, and that is not satisfactory as your district attorney. So I will say this. Let's make it very clear what today's press conference was. It was about, from your speakers, how they are dealing with the coverage and the spill itself. This was not the team that is overseeing the investigation. And I'm begging you, as the media, to call immediately and find out why in the world would they let the company divers go down there and look at that pipeline without any oversight. Maybe there is, but I better be wrong. because they cannot be allowed to touch that pipeline.
So if your office isn't investigating, who is?
Okay,
Actually,
so
I can clarify
Eric,
that.
you want to?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Sure. Yeah, thanks, DA. Yeah, so basically how the Unified Command works in California, it's a multi-agency response group. It contains the Coast Guard, the state, California Fish and Wildlife, and the responsible party. They are part of the Unified Command. The investigation is completely separate. They do that purposely so it's not compromised by the response. So we have, you heard from Lieutenant Corbo today from Fish and Wildlife. He is the responder for the Unified Command. We have a totally different group of game wardens and lieutenants that are working with Coast Guard investigators. A federal investigation is underway as well. And so there is a total full investigation, and once that investigation is complete, Mr. Spitzer's office will get a full report, and this is a criminal case. And so I just don't want anybody to get the misconception that there isn't an investigation. There is a federal and a state investigation separate from this response. These people don't even come in the same building, the investigators.
But just to clarify what the district attorney said, we heard from Martin Wilshire that his divers are going down and they've located an area where there may be a leak. What Mr. Spitzer is saying is there needs to be an independent investigation into that. It appears that the company, Beta Offshore, is investigating itself.
Like I said, Beta Offshore, the company, Amplify Energy, has a seat at the Unified Command. That's the way the law is, because they have the resources to pay for this and to help respond. But the Coast Guard has 51% of this response. So at the table, the Coast Guard has the final say. So any kind of decisions that are made with contractors, investigators to assess the pipeline would get the Coast Guard sign off.
Is the Coast Guard sending divers along with the company divers as you?
I can look into that. At this time, I don't have information about who's doing the assessment, but I can look into that and find out. There is an investigation underway, though, that I said, and I'm sure that's going to include, assessments of the pipeline.
So who is, you said an investigation is underway. Who is investigating outside of the company?
So there's a federal investigation, and there's a state by the U.S. Coast Guard, and a state investigation by California Fish and Wildlife Law Enforcement. Those investigations, as I said, are totally separate than what you heard today. You heard from the Unified Command that's leading the response. These people are, deciding how to best respond to the incident to minimize impacts to the environment and to wildlife. That's what they're here for.
Is the NCSB here too?
They are, yeah.
Would you describe your investigation as a criminal investigation or civil investigation?
At this point, it is a criminal investigation. It's conducted, like I said, the report will go to the DA once it's finalized.
And what kind of things are they looking for in a criminal investigation? Negligence?
I don't know at this point. I mean, it's like I said, I'm part of the response, so I'm not privy to what's in the investigation. It's totally separate. I have no contact with them.
Are we gonna get somebody to talk to us about the investigation?
Probably not, because it's an investigation. As Mr. Spitzer would tell you, you don't have people disclosing information about the investigation until it's complete.
Mr. Spitzer, could you address what potential criminal charges you might be looking at here?
Excuse me.
I can tell you real quick. It's against the law. I believe it's code 5650.
So let me just,
Yeah, go ahead.
under my jurisdiction, I have local charges that are under investigation for discharging unlawful discharge, hazardous material into a waterway. A killing of an animal because of toxic substances that were discharged into the waterway. The charges I can bring as a local district attorney, if I don't have the primary jurisdiction of the actual spill, are going to be somewhat limited. Again, I'm here to make the following point. The Orange County District Attorney's Office is deeply concerned about the wildlife impact that has occurred on our shores and the economic impact to our community. And somebody's going to pay for that, criminally or civilly. And what I'm telling you is I have assigned district attorney investigators to work alongside with the federal investigators in order to help shape the investigation. But what I'm alarmed by is, and you heard Eric say, this presentation today was one side of that discussion, which is important. How to deal with the spill, how to reduce damage to wildlife and property. But what I didn't like what I heard was from the company. And what I'm telling you is the head prosecutor in this county, that is not an acceptable answer. And even though, with all due respect, he's doing the best he can, he doesn't work for that side, he's right. There's that side, which is in downtown Long Beach, and there's an investigative side, which is not yet set up a command center. And what I'm telling you is that no diver from Mr. Wilshire's company should touch that pipeline until it is absolutely clear what federal agency is going to dive that pipeline itself and come up with its own independent opinion. If, for example, that pipeline rupture was in the 3-mile buffer where I have jurisdiction, then I'm going to demand that answer. I don't know at this point if I have jurisdiction, but I'm going to be alongside the federal investigators to ensure that it's done appropriately. And what I heard today, at least from Mr. Wilshire, not from the federal government, is I was not satisfied at all with his answers.
You said it was your jurisdiction was limited, but if it did happen in federal waters, do you have any jurisdiction to file any charges?
Yeah, so Chip, I have jurisdiction from the consequences of what happens from 3 miles in.
Even if it happened in federal waters, the break happened.
Correct. So like damage to wildlife, discharge in our back bay, we have jurisdiction. But again, if it turns out that the federal government, because the situs was beyond 3 miles, we are fully willing to be cooperative with the federal government to make sure it's a unified prosecution. But what I'm telling you is I need to pick up the phone and ask the hard questions you need to ask is, why would Mr. Wilshire's divers be going down there today? And who's going to be with them?
So is the U.S. Attorney's Office here right now?
No.
So Mr. Spitzer, could you say, do you know for sure whether it is beyond that 3-mile limit?
We know nothing, right? The only thing we've heard is from the company itself. And what I'm telling you is in investigations, you trust but verify. I mean, we need to determine independently what happened, how it happened, and who's responsible. And guess what? I'm not going to take the company's word for it. Is that shocking? I'm not taking the company's word for it.
So are you saying that you could potentially bring a civil action and or a criminal action? And the criminal action, would that be against individuals or the company?
Everything is on the table at this point. There's civil and criminal potential liability. I'm not going to, and please do not report, that I'm speaking on any way or on behalf of the federal government. We just have to determine what the situs is of the rupture, and that will help determine jurisdiction. However, for things that are happening inside the back bay and in our harbors, that is my jurisdiction as the local DA.
And so you have an open, active investigation?
I have offered, and it has been accepted by the head of the investigation side on the federal/state side to allow my DA investigators to be there at the table to participate. And I insisted on that, and it was accepted because we don't know yet, we don't know the extent of the investigation, and it could have significant and dire impacts for Orange County and the jurisdiction that I cover.